Have you ever noticed how the weakest men are always the loudest? They can't stop talking. They fill every pause, every gap, every quiet moment with noise. Jokes, boasting, explanations, nervous chatter, anything to avoid silence. But here's the secret most men never learn. Silence is power. And that's why weak men fear it. Because silence exposes them. It forces them to face themselves. It reveals their insecurity. Strong men can sit in silence. Weak men must run from it. And once you see this, you'll never look at noise the same way again. Modern culture trains us to believe that strength is loud, that power shouts, dominates, fills the air with words. But the truth is the opposite. Noise is often a mask. It's a performance, a way of hiding the truth that underneath the bravado, there's nothing solid. Think about the men who can't shut up. The man who constantly brags about money is the one most insecure about losing it. The man who won't stop talking about women is usually the one least successful with them. The man who dominates every conversation is the one terrified of being ignored. Noise reveals weakness because it comes from need. A need to be seen. A need to be approved of. A need to be validated. Silence, by contrast, reveals strength. Why? Because silence is absence without apology. It says, I don't need to fill the space. I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to be heard to know my worth. And that unsettles people. This is why weak men fear silence. In silence, there's no place to hide, no distraction, no performance. Just you, raw and exposed. Most men can't handle that. They need the noise to drown out the truth. But the strong man embraces silence because he knows silence speaks louder than words. Think of the last time you sat across from someone who stayed quiet while others rambled. Didn't the quiet one feel more commanding, more grounded? Didn't their silence force you to think more carefully about what they might be holding back? That's the paradox. Silence makes people project power onto you, while noise makes them strip power away. Because deep down, everyone knows the truth. A man who is at peace with silence is a man who is at peace with himself. And a man who fears silence is already broken. So here's Freud's brutal twist. When you open your mouth too much, you're not showing strength. You're showing the world you can't handle your own mind. And that's why silence isn't weakness. It's the secret weapon of the strong. Long before social media, long before endless chatter, long before a world addicted to noise, silence was a weapon. The strongest men in history didn't shout. They didn't explain. They didn't waste words. They used silence the way a warrior uses a sword. And if you look back, from the Stoics in Rome to the samurai in Japan, you'll see the same truth across cultures. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was power. The Stoics understood this first. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest emperors of Rome, wrote an entire philosophy of discipline and restraint. He reminded himself daily, if you are tempted to speak, be silent. For the Stoics, silence wasn't emptiness. It was self-mastery. A man who could control his tongue was a man who could control himself, and a man who could control himself could control an empire. Epictetus, once a slave who became a philosopher, taught the same. He said that silence reveals more than speech, because it shows you are not ruled by your impulses. Half a world away, the samurai lived by a similar code. To them, Silence was part of Bushido, the way of the warrior. A samurai didn't waste words. His presence spoke louder than his mouth ever could. His silence wasn't passive. It was disciplined, dangerous, alive with intention. Silence in their culture was more than respect. It was dominance. To sit quietly, to hold your composure, to let others reveal themselves while you revealed nothing. This was the mark of mastery. Even in the East, within Zen philosophy, silence became the pathway to clarity. The monks and masters didn't try to fill every moment with talk. They used silence to sharpen awareness, to strip away distraction, to confront reality without distortion. Notice the pattern? Different cultures, different times, different philosophies, but the same conclusion. The man who can master silence has already mastered himself. Now contrast this with our modern world. We celebrate noise. We equate talking with intelligence. We treat constant chatter as strength. But history tells us the opposite. Silence is the discipline of the strong, while noise is the crutch of the weak. The generals who built armies, the philosophers who shaped civilizations, the warriors who defended them, they all knew silence wasn't absence. It was presence. Because silence demands weight. It commands respect. It forces others to lean in. The Stoics used silence to rise above impulse. The samurai used silence to sharpen their edge, and both understood the same law. When you master silence, you master yourself. And a man who masters himself becomes untouchable. Why do weak men talk so much? Because silence terrifies them. Every extra word, every nervous laugh, every desperate story is a shield, not of strength, but of fear. Psychology has a brutal truth about words. The more you spill them carelessly, the more you reveal your weakness. Freud noticed it first. He called it the compulsion to speak. When the unconscious is restless, when insecurity runs deep, the mouth becomes its escape route. Words come pouring out, not as truth, but as noise to cover what lies beneath. Jung went even deeper. He argued that many men mask themselves with speech. The persona, the social mask, is reinforced by words. Men talk endlessly to perform the version of themselves they want others to believe. But the more they talk, the more the mask slips and the truth leaks out. Modern psychology agrees. Studies in behavioral science show that nervous people talk more, not less, when they're anxious. Silence feels unbearable, so they fill it. They over-explain. They justify. They try to win approval with noise. But here's the paradox. The more you talk, the more you expose. Every unnecessary word signals insecurity. Every over-explanation screams weakness. Think about it. In arguments, who usually loses? The one who keeps repeating himself, trying harder and harder to convince. In groups, who commands respect? The one who waits, listens, and speaks only when necessary. In attraction, who draws others in? The one who doesn't rush to fill silence, but lets the quiet create tension. The truth is brutal. Weak men talk to escape themselves. Strong men use silence to reveal themselves. Why? Because words, once spoken, lose power. But silence forces weight. It makes people wait. It compels attention. The man who cannot stop talking is the man who cannot control himself. And if you cannot control yourself, you cannot control anything. Psychologists even point out that compulsive talkers often suffer from a lack of self-trust. They don't believe their presence alone is enough. So they desperately try to prove themselves with words, but in doing so, they only prove the opposite, that their presence isn't strong enough to stand alone. And this is why silence is feared. Silence holds up a mirror. It reflects exactly who you are, without the shield of words. Most men can't stand what they see in that mirror. But if you can embrace it, if you can hold silence without flinching, you show the world a different message. I don't need to perform. I don't need to prove. I am enough as I am. And that's why compulsive talking weakens you. Powerful men don't waste words. History shows us a brutal truth. The men who spoke the least often held the most control. Because silence doesn't just protect you, it dominates the room. Look at history's most commanding figures, and you'll find a pattern. Restraint in speech, precision in words, and silence as a weapon. Take Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. He ruled one of the greatest empires in history, yet his private writings reveal a man obsessed with discipline, especially in speech. He reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one for Aurelius. Talk was weakness. Action was power." Or consider George Washington, the first American president. His soldiers respected him not for endless speeches, but for his quiet, unshakable presence. Washington wasn't a man of words. He was a man of silence and example. His pauses carried more weight than his enemies' shouting. In Japan, the samurai and daimyo lords understood this instinctively. They used silence as strategy. In negotiations, they let their rivals fill the air, exposing their motives, while they revealed nothing. A single nod, a pause, or an unreadable face shifted entire outcomes. Even in the modern era, leaders like Steve Jobs mastered silence. In meetings, he would sit quietly, letting others speak themselves into corners. Then he would deliver a single, cutting observation that redirected the entire company. His silence made his words lethal. The psychology behind this is simple. Silence creates tension. People fear empty space. They rush to fill it. And in rushing, they reveal their weakness. The leader who stays silent forces others to bend under the weight of their own words. He controls the tempo. He controls the frame. He controls the room. Contrast this with the weak leader, the one who can't stop talking, can't stop persuading, can't stop proving himself. His endless words bleed authority. His noise signals desperation. And in the end, no one truly follows him. They only endure him. Silence, then, is not passivity. It is strategy. It is the art of revealing nothing while forcing others to reveal everything. Negotiators know this. The most powerful move in a deal is not a speech, but silence. The pause after an offer. The refusal to rush. The calm that unnerves the other side until they fold. Commanders know this. The strongest generals don't roar. They stand silent while their armies feel the weight of their presence. And men who master silence in leadership carry the same lesson into every part of life. The fewer words you spend, the more valuable each word becomes. Silence makes speech precious, and precious words shape destiny. So here's the law. The man who rules his tongue rules the room. The man who spills his words loses both. Here's a question most men never ask. Can you sit alone in silence with yourself, without reaching for your phone, without filling the room with noise, without running from your own thoughts? Most can't. They need constant distraction. Because silence isn't just absence of sound, it's confrontation with yourself. And the man who can't face himself in silence will always be weak in the world. External silence is powerful, but internal silence is where real strength begins. Freud said that human beings are driven by restless inner forces, the id screaming for gratification, the ego trying to balance, the superego demanding perfection. Most men can't endure this chaos, so they drown it in noise. Endless talk, endless distraction, endless movement. But Jung warned that the man who refuses silence becomes a stranger to his own soul. Without stillness, you never meet the depths of who you are. You live only on the surface, shallow, reactive, dependent on the world's noise to define you. This is why silence with yourself is not weakness. It is the highest form of discipline. When you sit in silence, you strip away the mask. No one to impress, no one to perform for. Just you, raw, exposed, unfiltered. And that's where real strength is tested. Can you listen to your own thoughts without flinching? Can you face the pain, the doubt, the fear that bubbles up when the noise dies down? Can you sit long enough to hear the voice beneath all voices, the one that tells you who you really are? Most men cannot. They run from silence because silence reveals truth. But the few who master it, they gain control that others can't even imagine. Think of meditation. Long practiced by warriors and monks, it isn't about relaxation. It's about training the mind to endure silence, to focus, to face chaos without running, to strengthen the will by mastering attention. Think of journaling or reflection, practices of every philosopher and leader. What are they but structured silence? Spaces where thoughts can breathe, where truth can emerge, where the self is confronted without escape. Even in modern neuroscience, studies show that silence rewires the brain. It reduces stress, enhances creativity, sharpens focus. The mind in silence heals itself. The man who can hold silence repairs his own strength. But here's the deeper truth. Silence with yourself makes you unbreakable in the world. Why? Because once you can master your inner noise, no external noise can shake you. Arguments, criticism, chaos, distraction, they lose their power because you've already faced something far harder, your own mind. The man who fears silence will always chase distractions. The man who embraces silence can walk alone, calm, grounded, untouchable. And that's why the greatest strength isn't in speaking loudly, but in sitting silently and being completely at peace with what you find there. Here's the brutal truth. Every word you speak either spends power or builds it. Weak men spend their words recklessly, noise without weight, chatter without substance. Strong men spend their words like currency, carefully, sparingly, with precision. And that's the new discipline. Learning to hold your tongue until silence itself makes you stronger. Modern men have been trained to believe the opposite. That talking endlessly proves intelligence. That filling silence proves confidence. That the more you say, the more valuable you become. But look closely, and you'll see the truth. The men who talk most are often respected least. Because real respect doesn't come from saying everything. It comes from saying less and making every word count. This is the new discipline. Speaking less, holding more power. It begins with restraint. When you feel the urge to speak, Pause. Ask yourself, is this word necessary? Does it serve me? Or am I speaking just to fill silence, just to prove myself, just to escape discomfort? 9 times out of 10, you'll find the urge comes from weakness, not strength. And in that moment, silence is the stronger choice. Then comes precision. When you do speak, speak with clarity. Speak with intention. Speak so that your words cut rather than scatter. The fewer words you use, the more weight they carry. Silence makes speech valuable, and valuable words shape perception. Think of it like this. A man who talks endlessly gives away his power piece by piece. A man who speaks rarely and wisely multiplies it. This discipline also transforms relationships. In conflict, silence makes others reveal themselves. In negotiation, silence creates leverage. In attraction, silence builds tension. In leadership, silence demands respect. But the greatest benefit is internal. By choosing silence, you're not just controlling words, you're controlling yourself. You're breaking the compulsion to seek validation. You're proving to yourself that you don't need noise to exist, to matter, to be strong. That's what makes silence so dangerous to the weak and so empowering to the strong. It breaks dependence. This is why philosophers, warriors, and sages across time returned to the same principle. Mastery begins with silence. So here's the discipline in its rawest form. Speak less than you feel. Never explain what silence can say for you. Let others reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. And when you do speak, speak so that silence follows. Because silence is not emptiness, it's gravity. And the man who learns to master it doesn't just control the room, he controls himself. And a man who controls himself holds a kind of power no noise can ever touch. He who can sit calmly in silence, who can face himself without fear, who can let the world speak while he holds his ground, that man cannot be broken. Like, share, subscribe.